Jake DeLuca, come on up. This great young man, I love him so much, and he has a project that he's been working on, and today that project is sort of culminating a little bit, and I want for him to share this project with you.
Good morning, Mountaintop. So, around time of November 2015, I was applying to be in the National Honor Society. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. And right about that time, we went on youth convention. We all go as a youth group. It's an amazing time. But Fabian, I don't know if you guys know him or not, he spoke about sex trafficking, and the cause really spoke to me, and I decided that was going to be what I did my service project for. Originally, I was just going to do a bake sale, and that seemed a little cliche to me, and I didn't think I could raise that much money with it anyway, but I kind of just needed a project. I found my service, what I wanted to serve, and I was just going to do that. But Pastor Matt, you're actually in a little bit of trouble. Officer.
Just make sure you mention his name. Mention the officer's name.
You're being accused of being too nice of a guy.
Too nice of a guy?
Officer Brian here from Andover Police Department is taking you away.
I'm really not that nice a guy. Officer, I was speeding going to church today. I stole a Hershey bar last week. I'm not that nice a guy. I'm really not.
That's a great story. Great story.
Oh, no.
Take him away. All right. So we have with us today Mandy Leverett. She's with the Community Abolition Network. And like I said, this is all for sex trafficking, and she's really familiar with the topic, and she does a lot to help that. So she's going to speak to you today.
Thank you. Let's give it up for Jake. And Pastor Matt, I hope he's going to be okay. I met the officer. He's a really nice guy, and I work with law enforcement on a regular basis, and they're awesome. So thank you to the local law enforcement here. My name is Mandy Leverett, and I lead an organization called CAN. It stands for Church and Community Abolition Network. I work with our state law enforcement. I work with local law enforcement. I'm on the Human Trafficking Task Force for our state. And I also am part of the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking. We wrote the toughest law in the nation that is enacted today, and it's helping us assist and rescue victims. It helps people just like you and I to make a big difference. I want to take a moment and introduce my husband. This is Dwayne Leverett. We are both ordained with the Assemblies of God. We've planted churches in New Jersey. My husband is also a chaplain in the jail, so maybe he can help Pastor out a little bit today. But it's a real privilege. Thank you all for welcoming us. I have a little video that we're going to show before I go any further. So if you'd like to put that on.
You just take a seat.
All right.
Thank you so much for coming in. I'm Mary, by the way.
I'm Mary tonight.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Don't mind the giant microphone above your head.
I'll try not to.
There are 3 photos in front of you. If you could just pick one, it doesn't really matter which one it is, and show that one to us.
All right.
Could you describe her to us?
She looks youthful.
I feel like this is one of those situations where if I say he's 23, then he's actually going to be 16.
Hispanic, maybe not full, but part. Similar to me, actually.
Well, I mean, she's young, so probably has a lot of things to look forward to.
I would describe him as friendly.
She looks, happy. She doesn't look shy, but confident.
Anything she puts her mind to, she could achieve.
We actually have his story, if you could read that out loud to us.
Okay, Marcus. I grew up really close to my parents. Adriana. I grew up with my brother and sister.
Amy. I remember watching the Olympics on TV when I was 5 and being totally in awe of the sprinters.
I was the middle child and easily the quietest.
I felt like no one ever saw me or cared.
Dad was too drunk to keep a job, and he never even saw me unless I was in his way.
Mom worked 2 jobs to make sure we had food for every meal, so she was never here to know when he would hit us.
One day when I went to the mall, like I like to do to be out of the house, a man came up to me and told me I was beautiful and asked me on a date.
On our first date, he drove me around in his car and said we could eat whatever I wanted.
Every time we were together, he bought me something new.
Tom really cared about me, and Tom really made me feel special.
I was in love with him.
After only going out for 3 weeks, Tom offered me a way out of my home, asked me to move in with him.
So when he asked me to have sex with him, I did.
He would put his hand over my face until I couldn't breathe.
Tom had friends over pretty regularly, and I could tell that some of his friends were into me.
So I kept my door locked and hoped that no one would bother me.
After a few nights of crashing there, he said that I still owed him for letting me stay at his place.
He said he had a friend who wanted to spend an hour with me.
He told me I might have to do some stuff, but not to worry about it. It's not a big deal.
When I didn't want to, he slapped me and said no one ever cared about me like he did.
But I didn't know what else to do because I needed a place to stay.
His friends forced themselves on me and took turns while he watched.
One by one, they come down to the basement, telling me how pretty I am.
When they're on top of me, I just close my eyes and pretend I'm running.
I'm exhausted and I don't know what to do.
My name is Adriana. I'm 16 years old.
My name is Marcus. I'm 14 years old.
My name is Amy. I'm 12 years old.
I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
And I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
And I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
That was very different than what I thought.
Especially because, like, being a girl and imagining, like, if that was me, like, that's, I don't even know. I can't even imagine what that would be like.
She deserves to be a kid, just like what she is in this picture.
It being so close to home is something that makes me want to jump out of this chair.
I wouldn't think that Grand Rapids is a place where anything like this would ever happen.
Because you don't want it to happen to anybody, and you really don't want it to happen to people that live where you live.
Thank you for sharing her story with us. I'd like to show you something if you wouldn't mind taking her picture and following me to the gym.
Oh, wow.
I expected something certainly a lot smaller.
Bar graphs and numbers, and but these are actual people.
I don't know, in like my world, in my bubble or whatever, we don't talk about this. It's not something you think about.
You know, what we see is only on the surface.
I mean, looking at this, sex trafficking doesn't have any discrimination, that's for sure. Ages, genders, can affect anybody.
It hits you right in your heart, your gut, your stomach. It's like, wow. Now it's like I feel like I have this weight of responsibility to see how I can help.
Changes through greater awareness and making people realize that this does happen here and will continue to happen until we decide to make it stop.
So that's a reality, not just for Michigan. New Jersey is about roughly a fifth of the size about the same population. So we have that wall of pictures throughout our state. That was just West Michigan. The typical age range when a victim of human trafficking is taken in America and trafficked is 11 to 14. That's 5th grade to 9th grade. And often that is the only risk factor. They gain access to our kids, and they're going after our kids. And I could tell you so many stories. But I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to equip you, to empower you. I want to ask you one thing. What do you think is the greatest weapon we have to end slavery in our state, in our nation today? Anybody? Yep. Heightened awareness, good. Anybody else have a different idea? Prayer, powerful weapon. Anyone else? Well, Senator Keyes put it this way. Now, he was our former Attorney General. Now he's a senator, kind of leading the fight in the Senate against human trafficking. But he put it this way. He said, the number one weapon we have to combat human trafficking is our citizens. Because we are everywhere. In our communities, in our families, in our professions. Most professions, you would be surprised, most professions have specific indicators within their profession for human trafficking and cross paths with human trafficking on a regular basis. So you see how if it's everywhere, hidden in plain sight, how we would be the key to ending it, and how we need God to open our eyes and to stir up the giftings and the callings that he's put within us, not to leave everything that we do and everywhere we already are, and do something different, but just to engage a little bit of what we are already doing. Can I get the PowerPoint up? As I mentioned, my organization is called CAN, and I serve the whole state. We also assist with rescues and referrals nationwide. We work on all sides of the issue of human trafficking in the United States. So what we do is we empower community to do abolition, including prevention, which is what we hope for the best, detection, action, advocacy, and survivor care. So we take the things that you already do and retrofit them to serve survivors. Like we have churches with counseling centers. We give them trauma training, and we help them to better serve survivors that may come their way. We take what you do already. We have one of my friends, she's a hairstylist, and she goes and cuts hair on a regular basis for people in area survivor homes, just to bless the people. So whatever it is you do, we're not asking you to leave that, but recognize the signs, use your gifting to bless and heal, and also to prevent it and detect it. So that's what we do, and that's why we're here today. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So what does it look like? We're going to focus on that for the next few minutes. And what can we do about it? Those are really key questions because it is a really ugly subject. And like any ugly subject, awareness is good, but we don't want to be any more aware if we can't do anything about it. You know, there was it's reported in near the train tracks that went to Auschwitz, sending Jews to their death. There was a church. And the church, when they would hear that train, would just sing louder. And today, we're not going to just sing louder. And I believe, and as horrible as that idea is, there is something about, if you can't do something about it, you don't want to know about it. And for so long, that's kind of been the attitude. Willful ignorance. I don't believe it's here, denial, or willful ignorance. But as we're seeing now, people are being stirred up to action. And so awareness coupled with action is very powerful because it activates you, the greatest weapon we have to combat human trafficking. Jesus said, you are a city set on a hill. You are the light of the world. And so Jesus wants us to use what we have already to shine brightly. Go ahead and turn to the next slide. So we're going to talk about, really briefly, there are 6 forms of human trafficking on the globe today. Primarily only 2 are in the United States. It may surprise you to know that 83% of the victims of human trafficking in the United States today are born here. Half of those are children. The greatest form of human trafficking in the United States is sex trafficking, but globally, it is labor trafficking. So this is one form of human trafficking, child brides. Nearly 100 nations today, you can marry legally a child. Many of these nations are part of the UN. Some of them have been on the Council, the Human Rights Council. These aren't obscure nations. These are nations that should know better, and we know better. Our missionaries know better. They have been healing the wounds of child brides for decades, taking care of them when they're rejected from their family after they develop fissures from having children so young. And so our missionaries have been healing these wounds the longest. But as you see right up there, it wasn't until a year and a half ago that our UN ambassador to the United Nations, Samantha Powers, stood up and said, condemned this publicly. It was such a taboo subject because they said, don't preach to us. You don't understand. It's our culture. Many of the nations are Muslims. And in Islam, Muhammad, his favorite wife, he married her at 7, when she was 7. So do you understand how not just Islamic nations, but other nations as well, they have a cultural understanding. There have been cases of child marriage in our own country. In Mormon sects and that sort of thing. Of course, it's illegal in our nation, but where it's legal, there are no protections. And it took this year, only this year, you see the quote up there, March 15, 2016, Secretary of State John Kerry launched a strategy to end marriage and advance foreign policy. So these are nations that receive our funding from the United States. It's 2016, and it blows my mind. So let's turn to the next one. And then there's forced begging. In other nations, they'll maim a child or an adult, blind them to make them look more pathetic, and intentionally put them in areas that are highly populated, especially tourist areas, to get money. That then goes to their trafficker. Forced begging, child soldiers. There are some nations that have child soldiers, but then there are groups within those nations, like Joseph Kony's organization was well known within Africa, where they would abduct children, often make them kill their own families, drug them, and use them as soldiers. There are also organ trafficking. You see those guys with the slits on their sides? It's about $20,000 on the black market for a kidney. Of course, there are organs that you only have one of, that will maim you for life without them, or will kill you if you don't have them. There are communities that are raising children to harvest all of their organs in this world. Now, typically, we don't have that form of human trafficking in the United States, but how many of you guys saw those undercover Planned Parenthood videos? If that was ever indicted and there was guilt found there, that would be organ trafficking, which would be human trafficking. So it's selling people in their parts, as gruesome as that sounds. Go ahead and turn to the next one. Another form of human trafficking is labor trafficking. And it's really difficult to recognize it because it is everywhere and in everything. Now, there's labor trafficking that happens overseas. There's labor trafficking that happens in the United States. This is the #2 form of human trafficking in our country. But it looks like everyday everything. How many of you guys enjoyed your coffee today? No one enjoyed. I'm in Jersey. You guys, I enjoyed my coffee today. How many of you are chocolate fans? Those are the 2 biggest, most often tied to slave labor crops globally. So if you buy coffee or chocolate that doesn't say, fair trade or that sort of thing, most likely it was picked or procured by slavery. And we're working to end that. In fact, it's nationally, Hershey's and our companies in the United States are supposed to, by the end of 2018, be a percentage compliant in this. It's a global problem, not just chocolate and coffee, but just about everything, really. And a kind of fun way to look at it, there's a slaveryfootprint.org. It's a website that helps you understand your like you have a carbon footprint, helps you understand your slavery footprint. Did you know you and I own slaves today? Did you know you own a slave, or 2 or 3 or 40? You may not know it because you bought something that they worked on and was never paid for it. But this website helps you recognize, okay, by the things you do and purchase and eat, these are how many slaves that you've owned, that you've used their services. And that's not to condemn us, it's actually to help us recognize and be more conscious about it so we can get that number down. Because we want to be part of the solution, not a part of the problem, right? Right? And we can even pressure companies to use fair trade products. And sometimes companies that we think are fair trade aren't all fair trade. Like I was talking to someone and they were telling me, oh, Dunkin' Donuts coffee is slave coffee. And then I go to Starbucks. I love Starbucks. I went to high school just out of Seattle, so we love Starbucks. But she said, oh, well, actually, there's only 17% of Starbucks coffee is fair trade. And so it's about encouraging by our dollars and by our information all of the companies to buy fair trade. And when everybody is treated fairly, when there isn't slave labor involved, then we can make a difference. We can impact the world just by what we buy. And it looks like a whole lot of things, like you see a young man cleaning up in a diner. There are restaurants that have victims of human trafficking. There are braiding salons that are staffed by victims of human trafficking. And this is a nail salon. In nail salons, you can have a victim of human trafficking that is sitting getting their nails done because their pimp wants them to look pretty. Or it can be the person doing the nails. So it's a lot of everything everywhere. That's why it takes all of us to look and ask a few questions and start that engaging conversation. Go ahead and turn to the next slide. And also sex trafficking. Sex trafficking comes in many forms. We have a few listed there: pornography, chat, prostitution, stripping, spas. It happens in schools, government and war. They have declared this last year that rape, violence against women, sex trafficking is recognized now as an act of war. It's been ever since biblical times. You take over a nation or you win a victory, you take and enslave the people, you rape the women and so on. But they're just now recognizing it as a war crime. And so government, war, it happens on truck stops, movie theaters. It happens in internet bulletin boards like Backpage. Here you see many faces, all victims of human trafficking. This one right here in the middle has a tattoo on the inside of her lip of her trafficker. You'll see that tattooing. And sometimes it'll be a literal barcode. And that's saying to everyone, this belongs to me. And there's a whole ministry they have of taking tattoo artists and other people will help either cover up a tattoo of a former victim of human trafficking or help them get it taken off because they don't want to bear that name anymore. And I mean, how many girls have gotten tattoos of their boyfriend's name? I mean, that's kind of a common thing. So if someone you know has a tattoo, maybe a girl has a tattoo of a guy's name, you think, well, that could be her boyfriend. It looks like normal things. Go ahead and turn. And traffickers invade all of the normal spaces of young people. Again, that initial induction phase of 11 to 14, and sometimes that's the only indicator of human trafficking, the only risk factor. You see, how I met my trafficker: at school, at the mall, at home. Online gaming. I have a girlfriend who her daughter was just gaming with a friend somewhere on the TV. It turned out to be a 40-year-old Croatian man that was caught within a block radius of her house with a list of a half a dozen other kids that he was coming to get. So it happens everywhere. The typical story that I hear the most is, I met them at school. It was a 16-year-old girl that I stayed the night at her house. I went to school with her. Or I went to church with them. They were a normal family. It was all a front for trafficking. And in some cases, the kids are taken and trafficked elsewhere. And in other cases, they are trafficked while living a normal life. So it takes all of us to recognize what the signs are, to see, well, maybe I need to be a little more nosy and be a good neighbor. Maybe I need to invade their space because the traffickers are invading their spaces. One of the growing areas of harvesting victims of human trafficking are public libraries. Because they have the internet, people can meet people. I feel comfortable dropping my kid off, my older child who's not here today, to study after school. Her school's right next to the library. And traffickers know that. So we're having increasing numbers of victims of human trafficking being recruited at all of those public spaces in malls. One of our kids that was made aware about human trafficking was reached out to in a local mall, and she knew what it was, and she left and got away. But it's happening everywhere. And you can be in the cities, you can be in the suburbs, you can be in the country. Traffickers are targeting your loved ones. There are some other risk factors. If a young person runs away, within 48 hours of being homeless, they're contacted by a trafficker. That's the stat by our law enforcement. Sexual abuse. Sexual abuse can prepare someone to be future abuse in the future. So the majority of victims of human trafficking have been abused previous to their trafficking experience. But we can see, since we've been talking about good touch, bad touch since like the 70s in the schools, 1 in 4 females, the FBI's number is 1 in 3 females by the time they are 18 will have been violated, and 1 in 5 males. So you see, that's a big part of our nation, right? Go ahead and turn to the next slide. So we have a lot of vulnerabilities, but again, a lot of the vulnerabilities can just be that age range. In fact, there are children, there have been cases nationwide, but especially in New Jersey, of middle school students trafficking other middle school students while they were in school. So who could report? It was happening in the bathrooms. And it is happening in the bathrooms. In Newark, for example, it is one of the biggest recruitment tools and the areas of recruitment of the Bloods. And they're doing it right in our own public schools. And not just in inner city schools, but everywhere schools. So it takes even children to recognize the signs, because the only people who would have been allowed in there are other kids, right? So we see that they're targeting. Did we skip a picture? Are we done? What was the one right before? Yeah, okay, go ahead and go to the next one. So they're targeting, even in legal ways, go ahead to the next one, strip clubs. Sometimes stripping can be the induction into human trafficking, even though it's a legal thing, or the place people go after they're trafficked because they feel like they have nothing else to contribute. And you hear, this is a sign, a picture that was put out just recently. This place was a block from, or was on the same road as a high school, and they just wanted, young people to aspire to be strippers in the local strip clubs. Go ahead and turn to the next one. So we have an issue with demand. We have an issue with over-sexualizing children and women and men. And so what can we do about it? Well, that's what I like to talk to you guys about in brief, because I know Pastor Matt I don't know what's happening to him. But we want to train you. We want to help you. We want to help you get engaged. When there is an action point in your area, and I tell you there are all kinds of action points. I send out a monthly email list of action points, trainings, awareness. Like this month we have a fun run to raise money for our Walter Hoving Home, which is a women's teen challenge. They have been taking victims of human trafficking in since they began. They're having a walk and a run-a-thon. That will be proliferated on our Facebook page and in our newsletter that goes out through the email. There are all kinds of action points. Sometimes we need to mobilize for laws. This last November, every mayor in our state signed a resolution saying that they will bring human trafficking awareness and action to their communities every year in January, and January 11th, which is Human Trafficking Awareness Month and Day. So people just like you helped get that accomplished. People just like you helped write the law. And when Backpage.com tried to sue us and tried to shut down our law, churches and people like you signed an amicus brief to say, no, we're standing up against this. And so you can do things that you can't even, I mean, it can start sometimes. I have in the back, I have posters with the human trafficking hotline number for our state. I'll tell you one of my friend's stories. She just began to post those at local businesses she goes to, bulletin boards in her community. And that one action, with the awareness that she had, she began to say, you know what, Mandy, you know, I've always seen this one spot. It's over by the Carvel on this street, and it's, you know, it's always like dark, the windows are closed, and people are there all times of night. Can I call that hotline number and leave a tip? Yes. Just knowing what the hotline number is, if you got this, it has both our state and national hotline number in it. You can leave tips anonymously. And even if you're not sure, you can ask questions like, I saw this, does this mean anything? Just here, take it. And that has led to mounting investigations and people being rescued. Another thing that we do, outreach that we do that started 7 years ago in New Jersey, a former victim of human trafficking, Teresa Flores, she said, you know, it was over 20 years ago, actually now it's closer to 30 years ago when she was victimized in her state. She said, now we have a hotline number. She said, what can we do with that? And she said, what if we go to hotels when there are a lot of people in the hotels, like the Super Bowl? That's like the #1 big event in our country. And we brought hotel staff bars of hotel soap. They don't have to pay for it, with a hotline number on it. Some pictures, posters of missing children, and some pamphlets about information about, you know, what the signs look like, and see if they wouldn't help us watch out. And for 7 years, every Super Bowl, we've been sending teams to help Teresa accomplish this. Now, when we had our Super Bowl, we hosted Teresa, and we said, we're going to do soap. And we not only did it for our Super Bowl, but we have been doing it ever since. In fact, this last May, we did our 6th and 7th outreach. This particular one was in Atlantic City, but we've been doing them in the north as well. Every time we do these events, at least one of the children on our missing poster is identified while our volunteers are there talking to the hotel workers. The hotel workers say, I've seen that kid in here, or I've seen that kid in here this week. And so we empower them to do that. But it takes citizens a few hours on a Saturday or Sunday, 16 years and up, can come and be part of these hotel outreaches that empower people to do what they do within their profession. We're not saying hotel workers leave your profession. We're just saying within your profession, watch out for these signs. This last one, four, and this was not an event. This was just last May. There was no special event going on in Atlantic City. 4 of the children on our missing children's posters were identified. 3 busts happened while our volunteers were still there. Now, after we leave, it's an ongoing thing. The hotel workers, when they see people, still report. So we don't see, we're not law enforcement, we don't see the fruit of that. But when we know 3 busts are happening and kids are being rescued while we're there, we know it's effective. What a great way to spend 3 hours. So this is just one of the many ways we equip you to do abolition. And we do trainings. We're accredited by the New Jersey Learning Management Network, and we're working to get accredited for judges and lawyers as well, so that if you attend one of our trainings, our HT 101s, you will get full credit for that. Professional credit, continuing education credit, CEs, CEUs. So we want to help you help your people. We want to help you be an abolition advocate in your community. And so that is what we do. And can you turn to the next one? And these are just some action points that you can sign up for a monthly action email. You can join CAN. We meet monthly. We're actually working to open up human trafficking recovery homes in New Jersey. We do rescues and referrals nationwide, but we often take them outside, the victims outside of New Jersey, to get the best practices. We work with organizations that get an 86% success rate or higher. So that's not the world's best. That's That's God's best. They don't even come close. They don't even get to double digits in success rate, the world. So we take them to Teen Challenge, which has been working with victims of human trafficking for over 50 years. We take them to our Dream Centers, LA and Arizona Dream Center. And we also take them for foreign nationals. We take them to Restore. All Christian organizations. The Dream Center gets a 94% success rate. Restore for foreign nationals to this date has gotten a 100% success rate. And that is the difference that God makes. That is the difference that God makes, because it deals with the whole person and getting the whole person set free. And the powerful message is also, if they don't get that kind of care, what they found out is it's like a revolving door. Our state agencies that are secular, they said, Mandy, we're a revolving door. We have no success rate. They just keep coming and going because they have a lot of stuff going on: Stockholm syndrome, mental illness, trauma bond. They have nearly twice the rates of PTSD as our military victims of human trafficking do. So we're dealing with a whole mess that typically sends them back to their trafficker unless they get the real help. So I thank you that you all are helping with that. Today, in a couple minutes, we're gonna find out what's going on with Pastor Matt. I hope he's okay. But I want you to be aware that we are bringing those best practices services to New Jersey. We're collaboratively working with Teen Challenge in South Jersey to open up a home. And we're looking at some property not far from here for a rescue and recovery home in North Jersey. So thank you all. Keep us in prayer.